Okay, let's try it again. Okay, and then the fourth goal that we're going to have is to decrease emotional suffering. Okay, so the first three are really about like um, uh, the beginning parts about like experiencing emotion, how to like put yourself in a good spot, how to like keep from having unwanted emotional experiences that are really unnecessary. And then the fourth one is like, okay, and then when I do have a big painful emotion, what can I do to decrease the suffering of it or the sting of it, and to not become dysregulated because of it. So those are our goals, right? It sounds easy, like here are 4 steps to regulate emotions, but as we all know, like it's a lot more challenging than that. So it really just takes a lot of skill building, and how do you get good at any skill? It's practice, right? So let's take the first goal that we have, which is to understand and name our emotions, right? So I think that it's really important to get into the mindset in order to regulate emotions of identifying that our emotions exist for reasons. Um, and what we say for that is that all emotions have a function to it, right? And so they're communicating something to us, or they're there for a reason, right? So as humans, we experience emotions because they have a function, and we'll talk about the 3 main functions of emotions. Yeah, but I'm curious, have you guys seen the movie Inside Out before? Yeah, any
Yes, I have.
people see that movie? I love that movie. And oh, cool, we got a hand raised. So I love that movie, and it's just, um, and I guess as a therapist, I see all these nuances to that movie. But one of the really main goals of that movie is, and it's a kids movie, but I think it's really good for like emotional intelligence. Um, it's really like, I hope I'm not, it's a spoiler alert, I guess. So cover your ears if you don't want to hear this. But it's a movie about this kid Riley, and she has you kind of see a world inside of her head with the 5 main emotions. There's really like some say 6, but 5 main emotions. And it's like her journey of like moving, and then like how the emotions respond to it. And really, like in that movie, you start to see like they start to like shove sadness to the corner, and they're like, yeah, we really don't want you on this memory sadness. And they're like draw a circle, and they're like, you stay over here. But in the course of the movie, you start to see like the point is to identify like that sadness has a function in her life, and so I just think it's a really cool way of identifying with this idea that all our emotions have functions, even the ones we don't like, especially the ones we don't like the painful ones, like sadness or anger or anxiety. Those are emotions that we say like I don't like, but we wouldn't want to cut them out of our brain. It might sound good if I could cut anxiety out of my brain. Would we sign up for it? And it might sound good, but we wouldn't be better off for it because you need anxiety. Too much anxiety can be not effective, right? Or it can be troublesome and problematic. But no anxiety can be really problematic as well. And that's because like we have all these emotions for a reason. And so one way of regulating your emotions is to start to identify with like what is it telling me, or what is the function of this emotion, is sometimes what we say. So the 3 functions of emotions, the main ones, are really the emotions motivate us for action. Okay. So fear is maybe an emotion that we don't necessarily like. I don't want to feel afraid, or I get trapped in fear for whatever reason. I can develop this phobia. And so we might think of it as a pretty painful emotion. But a lot of times the function of fear is to motivate our actions to stay safe, right? And so when I am, I don't know, I'm hiking, and I see the edge of that cliff, and I look down. It's really a built-in reaction to step back, right, and to keep yourself safe. And it's the fear response that can help you do that. Or anger. Anger is an emotion that sometimes we don't like to have, um, but the function of it, like the root of the function of anger, is to like motivate your action to like keep your boundaries, or if a need isn't being met, to like advocate for yourself or to like step up for yourself. So like a certain amount of anger is maybe needed if I'm going to like protect myself, or if I see a loved one being harmed or hurt. The anger can motivate my action to like protect that person or step up for that person. Anxiety is another one where a lot of action motivation, where it's, I become maybe riddled with anxiety. I don't study for my test. But if I don't have any anxiety for my test, I'm not going to study at all. And why bother? I'll be fine, right? And so the anxiety is needed. I need to get a certain amount of anxiety to like get up to do this. That's one of the functions of emotions. And so understanding that, hey, this emotion comes for a reason, can help me to like respond to it, particularly to like avoid the urge to want to suppress it. I'm going to shut down all this anger. I'm going to shut down and pretend this anxiety isn't there. So remembering that it motivates our actions. Also, emotions communicate to others. That's another function of it. And what you'll see in general is that our emotions are better communicated even non-verbally sometimes than verbally. So if I said to you, I get a present for Christmas and I say, oh, Grandma, I love this sweater. Thank you so much. You could read that I don't love my sweater that I got for Christmas. Right? And we want to be careful of like treating that as fact. But you can notice how I responded with my emotions. And with babies, this is important too, because just they can't communicate that way. They can't communicate with words what they're feeling. If they have their sock, if something their sock poking them or whatever it is, they cry, they express their emotion in a different way. And so we need this communication of emotions to others. Sadness, we talked about sadness in that movie. One of the things that sadness communicates is the need for comfort. And so by communicating sadness, I can get somebody to respond to me sometimes with comfort. They can give me a hug or respond some way. So emotions communicate to others. Another important thing to know when we're trying to regulate them. And so we're getting the idea here that my goal is for regulating emotion isn't to cut them out. It's to get rid of them. It's also not to like hold on to them for dear life. Like, fine, Dan said I'm supposed to have anger, so I'm just going to do all the angry things. That's not necessarily it either, but we do need to understand like, hey, what is this anger telling me? And so emotions communicate to ourselves as well. So this is the part where like you might hear is like, I got to trust my gut. Or like a mother's intuition, right? Or you walk into a room and you get this uneasy feeling and you just feel like something's up. We can't really explain it, but there's an emotional communication going on between you and your environment that's maybe speaking to you. Or I'm walking in this area and it doesn't feel safe. I want to acknowledge that. We also want to not treat it like fact because we don't know it's fact. But we have this sort of self-communication with our emotions too. So it's how we're interpreting something, how we're responding to something with emotions is an important response as well. So it might be that, I'm safe, nothing's happening, or that room, nothing out of the ordinary is happening. But it very well could keep us alive. It very well could be speaking to us about something. So we want to pay attention to it. So that's one step in regulating emotion is knowing that they have a function. Maybe asking yourself, like, what is this trying to tell me? So how do we do this? So practicing observing your emotions. Mindfulness is a great thing for this, right? We talk about mindfulness to the current emotion is just being with that emotion without judgment. Because that's what mindfulness is, right? It's attention to the present moment on purpose with awareness, but without judgment. And so I'm experiencing this anger or I'm experiencing anxiety. And sometimes we add a lot to that. We're saying, I have this anxiety and it's terrible. This is the worst thing in the world. And that's really not the emotion. That's not the moment. That's what we're adding to the emotion. That's our judgment of the emotion, our interpretation of the emotion. So mindfulness is a way of trying to like kind of help us be with the emotion without the judgment. And can I experience that emotion for whatever it is? It can still be painful. I can observe not liking it. But just being aware of it means like, can I sit with the emotion? So mindfulness is a way of helping us to understand and be aware of an emotion. Emotions come from a prompting event, so we can be curious. We can identify, okay, where is this anger coming from? I wonder where this anxiety is coming from. what am I really feeling about the situation? Sometimes like anger is a secondary emotion, and it's really like I'm afraid of this happening, and and so we can like be curious about like where this is coming from, and that sort of curiosity about our emotions can help us better regulate it. Um, and then looking out for after effects. And so after effects is really like the cycle of it. So if I have this sort of prompting event of somebody says something hurtful to me, and I'm feeling hurt, and then I'm responding by like saying things back to them, and now really I'm feeling anger. It really started from hurt, but the after effects are maybe a separate thing that's like keeps the cycle going. Or if I do something out of anger initially, then I might feel guilty about it, and I might have a response out of guilt. And so we like notice like the patterns, like what happens to us as we respond to our emotions. But that's really the main part of this one. Is just a big part of um, regulating our emotions is just being aware of like why they're there, like not necessarily specifically about why they're there, although we can get really good at starting to figure that out. But just understanding that they're there for a reason. So even if I'm not sure exactly like what in this moment this emotion's telling me, knowing that okay, emotions are there for a reason. My approach is not to suppress it then, or my approach isn't to like latch onto it. We're just like try to figure out like what it's telling me and then respond accordingly. And another big part that's sort of underutilized even or recognized is just naming the emotion. It's just saying I feel angry, I'm feeling hurt, feeling resentful, I'm feeling embarrassed. Is just acknowledging the emotion, and it's like doing our some exposure to the emotion, right? So I'm feeling angry is helping me to like get with the idea that I'm feeling angry. And the first step to managing anything is just identify with it, right? Like any other problem, like if I'm identifying with substance use problem or something, it's like I'm acknowledging I have this problem, or and not necessarily that the emotion is a problem, but it's something that I'm trying to regulate. So just naming an emotion can be a first part for regulating it. Okay. Any questions so far on this first goal that we have? Oh man.
Yeah, actually, Dan, I have one.
Yeah.
Simply because when I was younger, I was having a lot of emotions that I never felt before. And so, if you're not used to, or you don't understand those emotions and stuff like that, and especially if it's something that's happened to you for the very first time, do you have any advice on how to actually learn what that is or how to figure all that stuff out if it's the very first time you're feeling that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So like I'm starting to build awareness to my emotions, and even like really painful ones. We have this term called like the window of tolerance, and it's like knowing your tipping over point, which is like how much exposure to it before I start to tip over. And you can build your window of tolerance, but I think still being curious, still identifying with the emotion as an emotion, and building awareness to it. It's like so what is this emotion, what am I experience, but at the same time knowing like what your window is. So if I'm gonna feel really upset and do like all the journaling to the point where I'm going to tip myself over, where I'm like going to be less effective at regulating, I still think that there's a window in there for you to like manage like how much exposure to this emotion I can manage at this point,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So awareness is still pretty key, but there's such a thing as like I'm all into this emotion, and I'm becoming aware of it, and I'm spending a lot of time in it and experiencing it to the point where it's hard for me to regulate it
Mm.
because it's so big and it's hard to tolerate. Um, in an ideal world, we can just sit with it mindfully and not judge it and not respond to it in any sort of problematic way. But as humans, when we're starting to try to first regulate it, we got to be cautious about like how much we can tolerate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, there's another question too.
Mhm.
How do you define and handle emptiness will and no will do anything to do anything? No will to do anything about it. There we go.
Okay. Well, and I'm wondering if whoever's saying that emptiness is sort of like this numb feeling, or it's like a lack of an emotion. If that's maybe what we're saying by emptiness, a lot of times we can identify that with feeling as a result of not experiencing emotions, um, which is again maybe something that's been reinforced in us, is to shut down our emotions, is to try to suppress emotional experiences, which can lead to that sort of numb feeling or empty feeling, kind of robotic feeling. We can get in DBT our reasonable side of our brain and not touch our emotional side of our brain. And then there's going to be a side where we're too far in emotional side. And so sometimes that might be how we would define the empty feeling. And so that's maybe what we could identify with that is maybe a pattern that's been reinforced of like shutting down emotional experiences. And then again, it's building up practice into experiencing your emotions versus shutting them down. And again, the window of tolerance I think is important for that. So it's like I'm going to manage my fear. I'm avoiding my fear of spiders. Throwing myself in a coffin of spiders is maybe not going to do it. It might be overdoing it, right? But can I like slowly, gradually expose myself to the idea of fear of spiders? And you can do that in a way with yourself, but also with a professional too can be really helpful, particularly um, with really big things. I don't know. What was the second part of that question, Jennifer?
Uh, how do you define and handle emptiness and no will to do anything? So she added, I feel the like feeling of being detached from everything, almost like loneliness, that type of thing.
Yeah. So again, that detached feeling is maybe a response to the emotional experience because it's painful, and a way of trying to like protect ourselves, right? Or trying to like manage the emotion, but that maybe isn't like the long-term solution. And so experiencing that emotion more often and finding ways of trying to manage it while feeling lonely, or whatever emotion that I might be suppressing, um, and then identifying with maybe some different skills which we could talk about. So, for example, like if I'm feeling lonely, like can I experience the feeling of loneliness as opposed to like shutting down that feelings, or maybe like avoiding that feeling, becoming more detached that way? Um, and instead, can I identify with feeling lonely, notice I feel lonely, recognize that it feels painful, and can identify any sort of other connection, a way that I could connect when I feel lonely. Um, and so we can touch a little bit more on that. And the fourth part about like decreasing emotional suffering, like so when I do experience the emotion, how do I make it, excuse my French, not suck so bad? And that might be part of this. So we'll touch on that in a couple of slides. Okay. I'm surprised how fast the time seems to be going. Um, so I just want to keep it moving. So a couple more slides. So the second goal maybe is to reduce the frequency of unwanted emotion. So many emotions and actions are set up by our thoughts and our interpretations of the events, not by the events themselves. And also our emotions can have a big effect on our thoughts about the event. So we can kind of play both ends. And so the example of this would be like back when we walked through halls with coworkers or in schools. Maybe you walk through the hall and you say hi to somebody and somebody doesn't say hi back to you, right? And our initial response, and I think a valid thought that would come into your brain is like, man, what, that person's a jerk, or what did I do? Right. And now maybe I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling worried that maybe I did something. Right. And I can spend the rest of my response of just like thinking about that and dwelling on that and being in that response. Right. But another thing that I could do, and that's just an interpretation of the events. If I'm just identifying with the events, is that person didn't say hi to me and that's it. Right. But what we add to it a lot of times is what we respond to. Okay. So if you check the facts is like the skill that we would call, which is like to challenge your interpretation or observe your interpretation. So that person didn't say hi to me. I'm thinking that they're mad at me, right? Or I'm worried I did something wrong. That's what I'm interpreting, okay? And that a lot of times is something that we can manage even before we have to feel upset, okay? So if I check the facts of it, one way I could check the facts is I could ask that person, hey, I said hi to you, you didn't respond. And they say to me, you know what? My brain hasn't been in it. I lost somebody close to me, right? And I just haven't been in there. Would we feel differently about it? Probably, right? And so now I have more of the facts and my interpretation can maybe match the reality, right? Or, and that can put me in a different spot. So I can regulate in a way where I'm challenging my interpretations or checking my interpretations. We can check the interpretations too and then have to deal with the feeling. But at least we can save ourselves from the unneeded ones. Okay, so maybe we check the facts and we say, hey, you didn't say hi to me. Are you mad at me? Yeah, I'm mad at you. I don't like you. And stop talking to me. Okay, so now I checked and that really fits. And now, I am worried or angry that that person and I have this conflict and I have to manage that feeling now. But I can head off the unwanted ones or the unnecessary ones because the ones that I built with my interpretation. We all do this. And so knowing what your interpretations are before you treat them like fact can be another way we can regulate emotions. So asking yourself, like, do I have all the facts here? What is a threat am I assuming? What's the catastrophe? Does my emotion or intensity fit the facts, right? So another thing we do is like the intensity of which we respond. Um, so somebody is like threatening, my daughter, or like I'm worried that they're like in danger. Like my anger and my worry to motivate my actions to do all the things. Like even like the angry things that we sometimes are judged as bad. Like I have to fight off that attacker. I have to punch them all and throat punch them as much as I can. Like that's where it motivates. That's the survival in there. When somebody breaks my pencil that I lent them, it might be justified in the way that like they something of mine has been intruded upon by them, and so that makes sense about like the function of anger, but not in the same intensity, right? And so matching our intensity with the facts is another way of trying to regulate our emotions, right? And so like identifying like what's the threat here, that my pencil has been broken. And a lot of times it's just what we're interpreting the event as. It's like this person doesn't care about me or any of my possessions or whatever it is. And so a lot of times that's the interpretation, not the events itself. And so we can do ourselves a lot of damage that way, and we can do ourselves a lot of regulation by like trying to ward it off. And so let me keep going, and then we'll. So that's the second way of regulating, or second goal for regulating, and I'll save some time at the end for questions, hopefully. All right, and then the third way is this idea of decreasing our emotional vulnerabilities, right? So maybe you guys have seen those Snickers commercials where it's like you're not yourself when you're hungry, and the person turns into like a different character or actor or something, and they say, "Oh, I know." One of them's in the car, and it says that you turn into a diva when you're hungry, right? And then here, eat a Snickers, and now they eat a Snickers, and now they're better, right? Well, there's something to that in sense of sometimes we can get hangry, right? What's hangry, right? It's hungry and angry. Okay, so it's like a different level of angry, right? Because you're hungry and you're angry. And this speaks to like where we're emotionally vulnerable, like when we're not in a good space, because I'm vulnerable because I haven't eaten. We can be vulnerable because I'm sick. We can be like, how good are you at dealing with anything like when you're sick, right? How good are you dealing with anything when you haven't gotten any sleep, or hungry? These are just things that put you in a bad spot to deal with your emotions. In 12-step programs, they call it HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And they say, watch out for that. In DBT, we have a please skill. It's physical health, eating, avoiding mood altering drugs, sleep, and exercise. But it's putting yourself in a good spot so that when that difficult event happens, that you can regulate easier. It's harder. It's hard enough like I get that flat tire to like manage my emotions of that. It's even harder if I haven't gotten sleep the previous day or whatever it is. Other things for that is, and not that Snickers is like the healthiest thing, but The idea is there. Make a plan ahead of time for coping with stressful events. So if I'm like going to like this family thing that I think is going to be stressful, if I can come in with some ideas of like how I can cope, I can, when it actually happens, I'm in a better spot to deal with it. Or if I'm not doing anything that is meaningful activities for me, I'm going to have a harder time managing the what we call negative emotions. And positive and negative emotions are really just our judgments of it, but it's like painful or like the emotions we like and the emotions we don't. So if I'm not doing things on like a daily that like bring me some joy or some feelings of accomplishment, it's going to be harder for me to manage my mood swings of depression or my bouts of anxiety. So we talk about like increasing our positives as well as like trying to decrease our negative emotional responses. And so a vulnerability is if I don't have any positives that I'm going after. Um, and then it's just like, how do I decrease my overall anxiety? How do I manage my depression? Those things are going to be there even if I'm doing some things on a regular basis, but you're going to be more vulnerable and less balanced to get there if you're not going after some positives. Building mastery is an area of that too. Like, can I insulate myself with like in this part of my life, I feel like I'm accomplished and I'm in control, and that can help make me less vulnerable for feeling out of control when this other event happens. So building mastery is like if I feel accomplished because when I play the piano, I feel good about myself when I do this part of my life, even though I feel out of control and depressed and anxious in many other parts. Um, Having at least one area can make you less vulnerable for getting swept into all the negative emotional responses. Okay. And again, I'm keeping moving. I'll save questions. And then so the last part is decreasing emotional suffering. So if I'm in a good spot, I'm using my play skill or my halt, and I'm sleeping good and I'm eating right. And I'm trying to manage my interpretations. And I'm using my mindfulness to be aware of my emotions. Then when I do have this painful emotion, how do I try to manage it? And so problem solving when we can is always useful. So if I'm feeling really anxious about these bills, and it's a really hurtful, disappointing, embarrassing, or anxious feeling to have these bills and not feel like I can pay them. Um, and if I can problem solve that by trying to call somebody to help me manage that, to work on some financial aspects, I'm still going to feel embarrassed or anxious or depressed or whatever the feeling is related to that. But I'm going to feel that less often if I can try to problem solve through that emotion, right? And so we talk about this opposite action skill a lot of ways too, which is um, doing the opposite of what you feel, of what you're urged to do with that emotion is when it's not um, the exact function of it. I'll explain this, but so doing the opposite action, a lot of times what your urge is when you're feeling that emotion can a lot of times be what works in the long run. Okay. So when we're depressed, what do most of us feel like doing? Nothing, right? Or not much. I want to stay in bed. I want to pull up the covers, right? And that might feel good and reinforce this idea that like I get some relief from that in the moment, but in the long run, it actually make me feel more depressed, right? Less active, make you feel more depressed. And so getting up and can I do something? Can I just get my feet on the floor? Can I get in the shower? It feels like opposite of what I feel like doing, opposite to my urge, will actually help me regulate that emotion in the long run, right? Even in like the short term long run, like later that day. Or when I'm feeling angry and I feel like punching that person, right? Who maybe said something hurtful for me, but isn't like attacking my daughter or something. Um, uh, the urge might be to attack. The opposite action might be what will help me with that emotion. So if I punch that person, I might feel actually more angry or for more guilt and cycle something. But the opposite of attack is to retreat. And so if I can back away, step away from that situation, that will help me regulate the emotion. So we call that sort of this opposite action skill. It's like doing opposite of what your urge is in the moment will actually help you regulate that feeling. Um, And so that's often can make it better. Like I might still feel depressed. It's really hard to get in the shower. But if I can work on like going against the grain and get skillful at that, that can help me regulate the emotion. And then when in doubt, like if I'm worried about tolerating the emotion without making it worse, sometimes we got to do what's needed. And we call this like survive the crisis. So there's these skills like crisis survival. And so sometimes I might need to distract from that emotion until I'm in a place where then I can problem solve it, or I can work on opposite action or try to regulate in a different spot. But if I'm 10 out of 10, I might not be able to problem solve. In fact, you're less likely your brain will function in a spot where you can problem solve, or you're in like this fight or flight response, right? The main goal at that point is to maybe just manage through the situation until you can get to a spot to better manage it. So I might need to distract myself when I'm 10 out of 10. I might need to soothe myself when I'm 10 out of 10. So those bills come in and I'm overwhelmed and I'm feeling really anxious. I might need to like take some time to do some soothing and do some distracting, but plan on coming back to that emotion, because otherwise it'll become avoidance and I'm just sort of trying to suppress the emotion. I'm not coming back to it. So tolerating it until I can manage through it, but coming back to it is important. If we don't come back to it, so vacations are needed, right? We like vacations. They help us with our self-care and our burnout. If I don't come back from a vacation, I get fired, right? They say he never came back, right? And so that's like escaping the emotion that we know is there for a reason, at least some part of it. So sometimes we got to survive the crisis and then come back to it. And that's a large part about how we try to regulate emotions. So sorry I had to fly through the end of it there, but we have a few minutes for questions. And Jennifer, I'm wondering if you have some that maybe I don't. I have one on the chat, and it says, recently started Prozac. Is this inhibition of my emotions, or really just manage my emotions? And so talk to your psychiatrist for anything that's medication related. I'm not a psychiatrist, put that out there. But a lot of times, like antidepressants, SSRIs, SNRIs, are like serotonin is a neurochemical we have going through our brain. And what we're trying to do with those is to manage our mood swings, okay? And so if you feel like you're on medication to the point where you are maybe too numbed out, talk to your psychiatrist about that. But the idea of medication can be that my mood swings might not be, or mood stabilizers or antidepressants, my mood swings just aren't so intense of a swing. So you're going to experience emotions, but it can be more like this than like this. And that can be the idea of medication, where it's maybe pills and skills that can help you through it. And the medication can maybe work on the chemical level to try to make it so that my emotional response isn't so intense, but I still have an emotional response, because you're right, you still need it. Does that help? I get so angry, no time to stop. How do I learn to stop? So that's a great question, right? And that's really where a lot of the key lies, is between like the stimulus, which is like the prompted event, like this thing, I see this thing and I immediately have this sort of urge to respond. But there is room in there. It's just hard to get there, right? So the stimulus and then my response to the stimulus. So I see this thing and then I automatically yell this thing. And so trying to stretch out that room between I see this thing and I have thoughts about or experience or notice my urge to respond. I feel like punching this person. I feel like yelling this thing. And in DBT, we have a stop skill. And it's called stop, take a step back, observe, and proceed. And I think a lot of the skill in that is like this take a step back part, which is like, I'm going to text this thing right away. And then like you're stopping before you send the text, and you're reading it. Or like practicing your mindfulness is like, can I be aware of like in this moment how I'm feeling and how I want to respond to this person? I'm saying this and it's like, hey, just do that. It's really easy. but I do think that takes a lot of practice. Um, just building awareness to when you're feeling triggered, and you're having the response, and trying to make some separation between those two things. That's the idea of, that's what impulsive behavior is, right? It's acting before I think. Um, I'm acting on impulse. And so I go from stimulus to the, the impulse to do something, and I do it, right? And then so spreading that out as much as you can, taking steps back, checking in with yourself. Mindfulness can help you separate that. Those would be my best suggestions for you. It's just keeping aware of it. So noticing what your markers are in your body. So your physical responses. Like I know, like when my shoulders are up to here, how stressed I am, and that I'm more likely like, and like if I can be aware of when I'm doing that, I can know when like I'm not regulating as well. Like noticing like what your physical responses are as well can be like your markers to this happening. I think it takes a lot of practice, though. A lot of practice. Reading some more of these. Let's see. I get questions regarding 12-step program. I tried it, but some days I have no willingness, which they say required. I just don't feel like believing or doing anything, and they say it doesn't work if you don't work it. Yeah. So for anything, 12-step programs, any sort of help that you get, I think one thing that's important is it's like separating like commitment from motivation. Like, so the difference is in like working on your commitment, and getting somebody to help you with that too. But commitment is like, I'm going to commit to losing weight or to exercising more. But best believe every day or week that I want to go exercise, I might not be motivated to do that. So that's one thing that I could suggest is like to stick with like the commitment, and like trying to work on like identifying like your commitment for what your goals are. And then motivation is something that's harder to work on each time, but not to give up. But like, so treating each day like as its own, and like just being mindful about that might be helpful for that. I turn to mindfulness again for a lot of these things. I don't know if that helped that answer as well. Someone said, yeah, it helped for the other question. Is it Lavorka? Was that helpful at all? I think the other thing is you just got to find what works for you, or you feel like it's a good fit.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like it's helpful, but these people, they're so pumped, and they're like, you have to be willing. And some days I'm not willing to get out of bed.
Yeah.
So I just give up. I feel like they're all like on the other level, and they're fanatic about something, and it's like a cult. And it's just, I'm a rational person, and it's just too much of a fate stuff inside. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you got to find like what works for you, and like, but keep trying. Like that's like, if that's my commitment, is like I'm gonna find something that works for me. Then like, if that's not working, let me go back to the drawing board, and like keep identifying what other options I have, and what else is out there, and like treating each day as different as like, so not if you're feeling invalidated by that environment, not internalizing it too is like, I got to own that. They're willing, or not, what does that say about me? And mindfulness would tell us like, we just be in the moment without judgment. So I'm just feeling not like this is a good fit for that, and being like okay with that. And okay is like accepting is like the moment. And then like keeping to your commitment of like, but I still want to keep practicing, getting better at this. And so that will keep like your search going. But yeah, from day to day, week to week, our motivation can sometimes go out the window. And then mindfulness would say like, the next moment is the next moment. And can I get more motivated this moment, or the next hour, or this moment? So stick to it. Hang in there. 2 new messages. Thank you a lot. I think this meeting is valuable information. Good. I'm glad it was helpful. Jennifer, other questions that you got? Or
I think they did the smart thing and personally messaged you because yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions? I'll be happy to answer. I know we're out of time. I don't want to keep you guys.
I don't have any more questions. Does anybody else have any more questions since he's wanting to spend more time?
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Hi. My name's Neve, and my question is, so I experience confusion. So I think primarily I would say that I experience confusion. Like I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me, but yeah, I'm like, I don't know. So I suppose my question is today, especially, I feel like, how can I get some clarification on this? Because I kind of think, look, I'm just, I've just been in an invalidating environment. Now I know Marsh is all about like, don't blame and all that. I understand. But what I'm trying to do for the purposes of clarification for myself is like, what is actually happening? What am I experiencing? And like, when I met somebody the other day, right? It was like you can tell me if I'm being a wreck, because maybe I am. But the other day, like my nephew, like his nana, right? So I was chatting with her and she was like, Neve, you are a fabulous woman. Like you're so intelligent and bubbly. Like what's happening? What's happening? And what's happening in your life? Like why are you what's going on? And it was kind of from her perspective, I thought, is this helpful for me going down this mental health route? Like, isn't it just because people have been invalidating? Like, shouldn't I just, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I feel like I could see in her eyes that she's like, what? I don't see what your problems are. I don't see what's, and then I was like, is it me? I'm like I don't know either. And I feel like I saw a psychiatrist because like I went to a doctor and they made a referral, and like I can't remember, like, but I don't think he said you don't self-harm, and that seemed to be a really big problem, because he was like, if I did, then I'd be a lot more important or significant. And I was like, well, no, I don't, I'm sorry. So I don't know where I fit in.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm just grand. I just don't know. I'm so confused.
And Neve, I want you to know that it's okay to be confused. Like that's a feeling in itself. And for me, it's just we're all on journeys of wellness in different times, in different spots, and you get to be wherever you are in that journey. Whether other people think you should be at some other spot or not, being not judging yourself with it, I think is important. If I were to give you any advice, it would be to just to practice that is taking out the judgments of it. That's what mindfulness tells us to do. And so there's like loving kindness or meditation can help with this practice. But with compassion, being okay with being on that journey for finding whatever your wellness is. And at this point, I'm feeling confused, and I'm just going to try to practice being okay with feeling confused now. And I'm on a journey to not be confused down the road or whatever. So that's one thing. We call that like maybe meeting ourselves where we're at, right? And so trying to practice that part can help us, because a lot of times what will happen is we might get discouraged and start to become defeated, and that's where maybe we can make it worse by like kind of feeling like giving up. And so that's why I would say, like, sort of, try to be kind with yourself and be okay with being at a place where I'm confused. And when I say okay, it's like just like accepting it. I don't have to like be approving of it to be accepting of it. Two different things. And then the other thing I would say is just building awareness to it. Whatever it is that I'm not sure of, if I can build awareness to it, then I can work on it. So I want to figure out why I do this behavior. I bite my nails, or I do whatever the behavior is. Start building awareness to it as much as I can. So I might write a journal down, practice like being aware of like when I'm starting to do it, what are things that are leading to it, how I'm feeling at the times. Anything that you can do to start to build awareness to it. Writing those things down, writing down when you feel that way. What are some of like the experience of like how you feel confused or down on myself, or feeling hurt about what this person's saying. Journaling can be helpful with that. It's just any sort of process of building awareness is what I'd recommend.
Okay, because I didn't actually think that at all. I was looking for the answer.
Yeah.
Because when I'm confused,
right?
no, I'm not being smart saying I'm looking for the answer from you. I'm
No,
saying
I
I'm
know what
looking
you
for
mean.
myself. Like
Yeah,
I'm going around like it's like a crossword. So I'm like, okay,
yeah,
what's the answer? What's the answer? And then when
yeah,
another person says it in real life, it's like when I say real life, I mean outside of my mind. Then it's like,
right.
oh, what do I say to them? Yeah, I can see why you're confused. I look great. I'm all like, you're attractive and you're this, and you're like, yeah, I can, yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And you're like,
yeah.
it's like, is this your own making or something? And you're like, uh, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to
And
tell you.
and there's only one expert of your emotions, and it's not the guy who comes and talks to you about emotions. It's only you. We're all the expert of our own emotions, right? And even a lot of times we don't know a lot about them, but we can if we practice like just being more aware of it. We hear a lot of times that it's like, I don't know where this emotion came from. It came out of nowhere. And what we believe though is that emotions are spurred by something, that they each have a prompted event. We're just often not good at identifying where it came from. And so it's like practicing, trying to identify where it comes from. And then like being okay with like not having all the answers, and that I'm like on this journey. Like this is a forever journey. I've been doing this for years. I teach these skills. I still struggle with regulating emotions in lots of different areas. And so it's just this, you know, continued journey I think that we're all on. And so hopefully
That's
that
real helpful because I think I am defeated because I don't have an answer. I don't
Mhm.
understand it. I'm looking at my degree transcript. I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm confused. I don't know.
yeah,
I just feel like I'll need to try and say the part you're saying. Maybe it's the skill of acceptance in the
yeah,
book. Yeah.
right. And yeah,
Yeah.
and acceptance, yes. Acceptance doesn't mean that it's like giving up or that I can't still do things, but it's acceptance like, okay, here's where I'm at now. And can I like then
Okay.
like, because what Linehan says is like freedom from suffering comes from acceptance. And so like pain plus acceptance equals pain. I can turn it into suffering if I don't accept it. It's pain minus acceptance equals suffering. So I'm not accepting my pain, but like accepting your confusion is what we would say, right?
This is my last question. I
Okay.
fall asleep. I'm not kidding. I'm not messing. I fall asleep when I try and do what Marcia says. Marcia wants us all to go into the fire and to come out the other side. So because my thing is suppression. Like I hate even saying that word, like because it's like I know what I'm doing. I don't do it consciously. It's not conscious. It's what I have been doing, whatever. And the psychiatrist said to me, "You've suppressed stuff for so long and avoided stuff for so long. So when I'm in like a therapy or something, like, or when I'm like trying to do it at home, like go into the pain, like, because I really, 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 really don't feel it, I fall asleep."
Mhm. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so physically falling asleep, it could be a number of things. Add that to like I'm building awareness to what's on the journey.
Okay.
Like where does that come from?
Okay.
But the other thing is like I would validate a lot of what you're saying is like, of course I suppress, or of course I struggle with identifying with painful. It's painful.
Yeah.
Adding a lot of validation to that, and then just building awareness to like why is that a response? It could be something even biological. So
Should I
adding that
put
to
my
the
head
list
in water? Should
to
I
to
put, because I think that it's
increase your
organic, because
alertness.
my
So
body is closing down, but I wonder, should I force myself to put my head in water or not? I don't know.
okay, so she's talking about the tip skill, which I love. It's the temperature, and we have this thing called the diver's reflex. So you can look it up in the book, but that is a nervous system response. Sometimes it could be that. That's
Okay.
something to maybe talk to somebody about, is like
Okay.
what that response is. That would be one solution if that was part of it, is like this autonomic nervous system response, like the fight or flight response. It could be that. It could be something else. So more assessment is what I'd say before I'm feeling comfortable giving you like exact solutions for it.
More assessment, more
Yeah,
awareness, more
more
journaling.
awareness,
Yeah.
more journey.
Okay.
Just true for
Okay.
all of us. But good luck on that journey. I wish you the best. All
Thanks,
right,
Dan.
I do have to go, but thank you all for having me. Jennifer, I'm curious if I do have somebody that wants to be part of a DBT, you guys consider a DBT support group?
Yeah, it's a peer-to-peer.
Okay. How would they go about becoming part of this support group?
Okay, so it's called it's a private group called MID, or wait, it's Mind. So
Yep.
MIND and then space fully FULLY aware AWARE, and then it's the DBT Zoom group.
Mm-hmm.
And I can actually give you a link to it via email and stuff like
Oh,
that.
that'd be perfect. Yeah, if you could. Yeah, I'm just, if I had somebody along the way that could use a support group before or after DBT, or if at all,
Yeah,
we'd love to send them your way.
awesome. That would be wonderful.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope that was helpful, and take care.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. We really appreciate you coming in and helping out and doing what you can. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care. Okay. Well, he's gone. All right. Well, how did you guys like that?
Jennifer, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember you really wanted